The Diamond Bar Ranch near Stapleton, Nebraska was honored yesterday in the Capitol in Lincoln as the 2025 recipient of the Leopold Conservation Award. Joining me now is Robert Jones. Congratulations on such a well-earned honor.
Yes, thank you, Rebel.
Well, creating a mutually beneficial relationship between the livestock and the land is really at the heart of ranching. Tell us about some of the conservation practices that you use on the Diamond Bar and some of the impacts that you've observed.
Yes, on our Diamond Bar Ranch company, we started way back doing some long-term agreements and uh, a lot of infrastructure, some cross fences in the 90s. And it actually started before that, just out of necessity. But during those years, we put in extra windmills in each pasture, divided it into either two section or one section pastures where a lot of our acreage was, 20,000 acres in total, but there was maybe 5 or 6 sections in a pasture. Um, Now we can rotate um, very extensively on a 15 to 20 day basis our cattle. And we couple that with our own hay that we raise and some alfalfa crops um, to get the best nourishment for our livestock.
Awesome. Well, something that was really impressive to me was that you have planted 31,000 trees and shrubs in the last 25 years. Talk about that labor of love and the motivations behind that.
Yeah, I've always been fortunate. Growing up, we had great tree strips, but we always needed a little more for early spring turnout, and we just put them in places that benefited our cattle the most. Um, my family always wanted to plant trees. In the 1930s, under the WPA administration, Roosevelt era, they put in a lot of our first big tree strips, and that's what we relied heavily on through some of those heavy 70 winters. We haven't had that kind of weather. We were unfortunate to lose quite a few trees this last February, a year ago, during a fire that went through our winter headquarters. We lost probably 3 or 4 different quarter-mile strips of junipers and cedars, and even our big cottonwood groves that were planted at the turn of the century.
Awesome.
But our main calving areas are still intact, and we're grateful for that wind protection.
Very cool. Well, something we talked about prior to recording was how you have really tailored your conservation practices to fit your needs and your ranch. What advice would you give to someone who's looking to do the same?
I think you've got to work at it slowly and develop, partial um, rest of your grazing areas by rotating pastures um, during the growing season, especially. And then you just tailor it to meet the number of cattle that you feel you can carry on that ground, and you're able to move them with ease. You don't have to go from one end to the other of your property. Just step by step, you can take them through the paces of their summer. And that's what we've done it for. The the big thing is it's improved the wildlife um, in our ranch area, and along with that, you know, the water development. We've always had like overflow ponds, um, so there's always water that's not in the tank that's available for any type of wildlife, birds, prairie chickens, seem to be an indicator of your range health. We're very proud of that.
Awesome. Well, your wife and 4 children have integral roles on the ranch. How important is it to you to ensure that the land is in good shape for the next generation?
It's really important. I think my oldest daughter, Natalie, sums it up the best when she says, leave it as good or better than when you first found it. And I know my great grandfather that bought the ranch in 1901, and then his son, Robert Baskin, on my mom's side, was real instrumental in planting some go back in the 1951, seeding those very important decreaser type grasses like Indian grass, prairie sand reed that make up, 70% of your forest. And we see what that did over 10, 15, 20 years time, and then we've just expanded on that. So one of the newest deals we're doing now is we're planting grass seed mixtures around our hay meadows, legumes also, red clover. Some of it's kind of like a natural remedy to up the nutritional value. I'm really excited about that new progress that we will be making.
Well, in addition to preparing the land for the next generation is really already involved back on the ranch. Talk a little bit about your family, your children, and their various roles.
Integral, my whole family is, with Grant home from the college, and Lance, even though he's in college, he, is a very integral part. He's a business thinker. And Shaylee has been home with us 2 years, and she is an organizer, is taking care of a lot of our technology needs, our bookwork needs, and can't stress that enough. And then, of course, Natalie, her skills of what she does for us. So I want to stress that.
Awesome. Well, you clearly love what you do every day and love the land as well. What is the most rewarding part of what you get to do every day?
I think when we can have the feed resources and take some of the pressure off of those grazing lands, when we're calving these black or red Angus cows, we can see the progress in our genetics and the real viability and the health of the animals start coming around when that grassland is in good shape that we can spend the summer on. And in the fall, our cows are in better shape before weaning, and that just helps our breed back. So I think it's the true balance in our operation where we provide our own hay and forage. We can know how much we can sustain through the winter with our feed resources, and we can match that to our grazing lands and our wet meadows. So it's pretty significant to have that balance of hay and rangeland, and the water is a big part of that too.
Perfect. Well, is there anything we've missed that you'd like to be sure to include?
I guess our dependence upon our community and our neighbors that help us with different activities through the year. And we also like to use our horses. We raise a few horses, and that takes a little bit of impact, in moving the cattle around. We're not disturbing any more soil or trails than we have to. And it's a great psychological relaxation, and it's mentally prepares you for the challenges that you face dealing with a horse's attitude. I think our cattle are calmer and easier to handle in that manner. So we sure appreciate that time of working cattle on horseback.
Once again, that's Robert Jones, owner of the Diamond Bar Ranch, the 2025 recipient of the Leopold Conservation Award. You can read more about their story at ruralradionetwork.com. I'm Rebel Ciclocha reporting.